Well, the real estate market is certainly changing. I've never in my life lived through a market where the government has come out and announced their intentions to negatively affect house prices. But the South Australian market has continued to give us shelter from the storm. It's such a resilient market. If we look at house prices, this time last year our median house price was $914,000. Today it's $1,019,000. So the prices have actually continued to go up. What we have noticed, however, is transaction numbers dropping. In my view, real estate has started to behave like a Valem good. Now, a Valem good is something like Pokemon cards or Bitcoin, where people will sometimes knowingly overspend on it simply in the blind belief that someone else will pay more for it later. So if the national sentiment is that prices are softening, the first buyer shift that we're going to see is the behaviour of investors, and I think we've already started to see that. Investors are going to be a lot less bullish. Investors are also very confused because of all of the changes that the government's been introducing in tax reforms, and the volume of investor participation in the market has dropped 30% just in the last few short months. Also, we know that interest rates keep going up, and that's the RBA's response to inflation. But what the decision makers don't seem to comprende is it doesn't matter how much you put up interest rates, it doesn't curb the spending of the government, nor does it affect the buying behaviour of wealthy, established, older Australians, many of whom don't even have a mortgage. So my expectation is that inflation will continue to remain high and we'll probably see ongoing interest rate increases. The government's also stamped out foreign purchasing of property. They can no longer buy whatever they want. They're now refined to buying just new builds, and that's for the purpose of actually residing in, and they're required to sell them again when they leave Australia. Also, we've seen the introduction earlier this month of the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism protection laws, and that requires a real estate agent to deeply interrogate the source of funds for any purchaser who'd like to buy property. And that is going to all but put a stop to any dirty money flowing into the Australian property market. Now, is it the right thing to interrogate questionable purchases? Of course it is. Is it going to affect property prices? Of course it is. So we do face a lot of headwinds, but it's creating, in my view, a Mexican standoff. Buyers are hearing national media headlines that prices are softening, and they're demanding discounts on advertised prices. Sellers value what they own. We're in a stable economy, and they don't agree that they need to concede anything on price because our own state's data suggests that prices have not weakened one bit. And we've seen that in the clearance rates at auction. The clearance rate at auction has been in free fall for the last few months, from a high of 94% clearance rate down to the mid-30s. Now, that's not properties selling for more or selling for less. That's properties failing to transact, and that is a sign of that Mexican standoff where the buyers are not prepared to concede to the price the sellers want, and the sellers are not prepared to concede to the price that the buyers want to pay. Now, in my experience, all of these things pass over like a wave, because people that want to buy a property are still going to need to buy, and people that want to sell a property are still going to need to sell. So normally we see a big kickback following a stall in the market because everybody still ultimately wants to transact. But what we know is this: there will be properties that do very well when selling and properties that don't, and the agent that they engage has a lot to do with it. It is no longer the market to hire an inexperienced friend of a friend who's got their real estate licence. If we look at the top tier agents in Australia, the average tenure is 13 years of local selling experience. You have to hire an agent who has experience in this sort of market, because many of the agents in the market today have never worked through this sort of market, whereas many of us are absolute experts in it. Hire an agent that's going to give you sound advice. Focus on fundamentals like quality marketing, strategic advice, and skilled experience in negotiation, and you'll do very well. There's been a pandemic of people that have been let down when they've hired an agent based on an overly optimistic appraisal or the offer of cheap fees or marketing. Often, the property fails to sell, or it sells after lengthy days on market for a significantly reduced price. For those that fail to sell altogether, they face embarrassment, the loss of their investment in home staging and marketing, and I suppose dealing with the damage, the perceived damage of value that has occurred in the market. So call us and we will speak to you as skilled, experienced professionals. We'll tell you what you need to hear up front and what you want to hear when the offers are on the table, and not the other way around.